Grief, as we all know, is the general or natural reactions of loss. Alright, to some point it can be very strong and overwhelming emotion. But usually when it's involved as ourselves, we've been diagnosed or with any terminal diagnosis, or it can be if the diagnosis is from someone we know, someone we love.
If we lose something that is dear to us, if we lose a job, if we lose a relationship, if we lose, so it could be a loss of anything. But I guess when we're talking about palliative care and hospice, perhaps the focus is on grief in the sense of losing a loved one, somebody dear to us. And I think the interesting thing about grief is that many people don't really understand grief. People think that, you should get over it. Okay, fine, you're sad for maybe a week or two, but then, you need to get on with your life and just kind of deal with it. But I think coming from, as a palliative doctor, and being with patients in the community and being with their families, and perhaps some of us have gone through grief ourselves, we know that it's not, okay, grief ends here at 2 weeks, you get on with life. In fact, grief stays with you, people say forever. And you just tend to grow around that grief, but it completely changes who you are because you've lost somebody so dear to you, and that person is now gone forever.
As Ross stated in the stages of grief, or I might prefer to say as a process of grieving, there's a lot of roller coaster emotion that involve, which is denial, it can be bargaining, stress, depression, and also to come to the acceptance level. So it can be either one to come first. Alright.
Kematian mak saya, pihak hospice ada datang ke rumah. Dia ada menemu ramah ayah saya lah, tentang keadaan ayah saya macam mana. Dia take it benda ni, dia menerima benda ni, dan ayah saya pun, saya percaya dia meluahkan beberapa benda lah. Jadi ada juga kaunselor saya yang tanya keadaan saya macam mana, kami adik-beradik macam mana selepas kematian. Tapi bagi saya personally, saya rasa saya boleh cakap lagi bagi pihak adik-beradik saya lah, dan ayah saya juga. Masa 5 bulan dia bedridden dan hospice membantu tu, saya boleh katakan saya tak ada ralat apa. Kita dah bagi yang terbaik untuk dia. Dengan ada sokongan daripada hospice ni, memang saya boleh katakanlah kita bagi yang terbaik untuk dia lah. Saya ambil, kenapa saya cakap macam ni? Yang pertamanya, masa 5 bulan tu dia sakit-sakit pun dia rasa gembira. Dia rasa happy. Ada orang datang jenguk-jenguk dia. Dia pun ingat doktor daripada hospice tu. Kadang-kadang dia tanya saya, mak saya tanya saya lah, doktor hospice tu ada datang ke, saya datang ke. So dia so saya boleh kata secara dasarnya kita dah buat yang terbaik lah untuk arwah mak saya ni, dan dia pun pergi dengan tenang.
First of all is listen without judgment. We try to understand what they've been through. That's the most important thing. Right?
And it's also important to support people going through grief. And really, it doesn't really mean that you have to offer them any solutions. You can't bring their loved one back, but you can be there for them. You don't even have to say anything. Just sitting with someone, listening to them, or doing things with them. Maybe get their shopping for them. It can be in so many ways. And I think
to be there with them, for example, offer help. When we offer help, we need to be very specific. For example, what can I do for you today? Can I cook you lunch? Can be the example, right? Because those who are bereaved person, they can't even think, what they need at the very time, because their mind is very clouded with all the emotional turmoil they've been through. Alright. Thirdly, it can be if you might see they been through this like more than 2 months. They cannot they cannot function well. Right. It's really consume the daily routine. So they might need a professional help. So I think that there is a psychologist or counselor at the klinik kesihatan also the hospital that they can refer to and go to get a professional help.
Sebab saya nampak doktor dengan nurse tu dia buat dengan hati lah, sampai dekat kami. Dia sampai dekat kami. So that's why saya dengan adik-adik rasa terkesan, dan benda tu sampai dekat kita, dan arwah mak pun saya rasa benda yang sama lah.
Like in our hospital, we have bereavement support group, right? Also a bereavement session when under palliative care. So we have it every once a week, right? We usually see our patient 2 weeks after the departure. Yes, so that's a bit involved the family members and also the siblings and the whole family. Yep.
Right, so when we talk about palliative care and how it relates to grief, there are several aspects that we look at as palliative care professionals. One is we want the patients who are ill or have that illness are going through grief themselves because they have lost a dream that perhaps, or a life that they once envisioned. If they didn't have cancer, or if they didn't have this illness, they perhaps know that they have maybe 6 months to live, and they know that they're going to lose their loved ones, and they know their loved ones are going to lose them. Now, how we can help as professionals in palliative care is helping them to process that grief early on, process their thoughts, their emotions, and most importantly, making the most of the time that they have left. So we add quality of life to their days, even though we may not be able to extend their lifetime as such. And in terms of the grief for the family members, by helping to prepare the patient, we also help the family members to cope with the anticipated loss of their loved one. And by doing so, we help them to maximize their time as much as possible with their loved ones while they are still here, and therefore they have less regrets when their loved one finally leave this world. I hope that as society we learn to support people with grief better, and people who are going through grief to know that it's okay to be grieving, and that we can seek help for grief if we need it. And I think one of the problems or challenges that we have nowadays is that there's not enough resources for people to actually access grief therapy or grief support. So at Kasih Hospice Foundation, we haven't started yet, but I'm thinking of starting a grief cafe. We've done death cafes in the past, and it has received some support, but I think a grief cafe is definitely much needed, either by families who have not yet lost their loved ones, so it's what we call anticipatory grief, or those who have lost their loved ones and are either struggling with their grief or just want to be among people who are going through the same as them, and staff who know what it feels like to be grieving, because sometimes not everybody understands that. And we've also interestingly done arts through healing, or healing through arts, I'd rather say. So healing grief through arts, and that has helped us as staff to understand grief and to help our patients go through it. So